Okay, at this time, I have a surprise for you. Dennis is not our speaker tonight. But being the gentleman he was, he sent his wife to speak first. So I'm going to introduce Katie P. from Yucca Valley, California.
My name's Katie, and I am an alcoholic. Hi, Katie. And that's probably the most important thing I'm going to say right now. If you're new and you didn't raise your hand, welcome. And if you take a minute and you ask your higher power to hear something I say, then you'll hear something I say that you need to hear, even if I don't say it. One of my best sobriety sisters was speaking, and she was talking about her higher power, and she spoke for 45 minutes on her higher power, and afterwards this man came up and he said, I am so glad that you have a dog too, because I couldn't be sober without my dog. And she didn't have to tell him that she hadn't said dog not once. You know, my God doesn't waste a drop. I hear what I need to hear if I said the prayer. So with that, I was raised in a little town in 29 Palms, Yucca Valley. That qualifies me right there to be an alcoholic. I was born in 1950, and I went to high school during the Vietnam War. And there was 2 rules. You don't say this one person's name, and you don't stay on the phone too long, because at that time we had party lines. And my dad was a tow truck driver. And I had one obsession. I wanted to drink with the big people, but I couldn't. First time I drank, I got drunk. I threw up all over some lady in an A&W root beer stand, and it went downhill after that. So they found these little diet pills, and truck drivers used to take them, and they called them little cross tops. And then I could drink with the big people, you know. Without them, they said that Katie, 1 drink, Katie felt it. 2 drinks, anybody could feel it, because I would just black out. I thought I went to sleep. And it never worked out. So I grew up as a feral child. I just kind of, you know, the one rule, don't be on the phone too long. And it didn't matter when I came or went. You know, my parents were driving tow trucks, or they were playing cards and having a good old time. And we grew up with good luck and bad luck. It's like I didn't have to... You know, I just always knew. I remember getting off the bus when I was little, and I was too proud to tell the bus driver that I got on the wrong bus. So I got off the bus, clear out by 29 Palms Marine Corps Base, and we lived in town, and I kept praying, oh, I hope I'm lucky enough that somebody stops and gives me a ride. Oh, I hope I'm lucky enough that nobody stops and hurts me. I had no idea that I could have a higher power. I had no idea that I could pause when I was scared. And so I pretty much grew up holding my breath and spinning out of control. You know, I couldn't drink very well, so I didn't really start drinking a whole lot. Every time I drank, I woke up. Alcohol would take me down places that I did not give my permission to go, and I had no idea. And I just wanted to be a good girl. I wasn't a badass. I had great big thick glasses, and I wouldn't wear them, so I couldn't read and I couldn't see, and so everybody kind of thought I was stuck up, and I just kind of went through school that way. I got married the first chance I got, and he was. I grew up with all guys about 4 years older than me. All went off to college. They were all smart. And I grew up driving a tow truck. I mean, in 1960, the cops would say, get that drunk off the road and get that tow truck down to the yard. And I just thought that was normal behavior. I thought when you were 13, you piled pillows up in the tow truck and you drove. And you pulled trucks and cars and boats and all of that stuff. And learned to back that boat right up into the yard at the tow truck. So I I wanted to be like my dad. That's all I wanted to do, is I wanted to be like my dad. He was happy, he was fun, and my mom was always pissed, and I did not want to be like her. And she was just horrible. I hated her. So I married, and I had 2 kids, and so I couldn't drink after we got divorced because he was a corporate lawyer, and I knew that he would take my kids. So I would hire people to make sure I didn't get too drunk, and I would buy their drinks. I was a hairdresser by then, and I was making really good money back then, and I was like this little alcoholic hairdresser that didn't drink yet, not really. And so I just kind of held my breath all through that. I knew that somebody was going to find out that I was stupid. I knew that you would find out that I couldn't spell. I had a receptionist, I had a good business, and the receptionist would say, could you write Gertrude on the appointment book while you're up there? And I said, I don't pay your skinny ass to write Gertrude. You get up here and do it. And I had to be mean, and I didn't know how to be mean because it's not in me. Well, it is kind of in me, because I can look at you and say, fuck you very much. And you think I'm saying, thank you, come back again. So I have it in my head, but I never shoplifted as a teenager because I might get caught and I would be embarrassed, and I would die if I got embarrassed. I knew I would die. So my kids are, I'm running this business. My kids are in school. I have an ex-in-laws that are taking care of them whenever I can't. And I'm just running. And I can't take a deep breath. I just can't take a deep breath. I got with this guy that was really good with my kids because the corporate lawyer told me I was too stupid to raise my kids. So I immediately went and picked this guy that was really nice to my kids and married him really quick, and he molested my son. And I just couldn't handle that, and that wasn't the reason I drank. I mean, I hadn't really drank yet. I just kind of lived with all of that. I just wanted to take one deep breath. I just wanted to take a deep breath. And then I met my husband, Dennis. And I had my business, he had his business. And we were like this cake mix, waiting for the rum. Because my kids are now 14 and 12. They can kind of take care of themselves. I just want a break. I just need a break. And I met Dennis, and his kids were little, but they lived with their mom. And all my friends would say, Katie, what is wrong with you? You used to get to work on time and do all this until you met him. And then all of his friends were saying, God, Denny, you used to, really have it together until you met her. And we took our lives right down the toilet in no time at all. I could take a breath, and I thought I'd never done drugs because everybody had said that this little crosstop was just to help me drink better. So, he kind of introduced me to some other stuff that could really help me drink better, and it was all his fault. And he's such a nice guy. He took it. I remember one time, I told him I was too drunk to drive home, and he didn't want to go get the car and drive 2 cars and all of that stuff. And so the next morning I woke up and I said, I had this dream that people were honking at me. And he went, they were. You were driving the wrong way on the freeway. And I said, I told you I was too drunk to drive. And he felt so bad. I just kind of loved it. And, we were just running our lives into the ground. And my kids were kind of running amok. And my daughter had hurt herself really bad. And I had all of those people feeling sorry for me because here my daughter had amputated her hand. And I had all these medical bills. And, my customers were feeling sorry for me. And it was just crazy. And then we kind of lost our houses, but we sold them just before we lost them, so we didn't really lose them. And we ended up in a trailer park in Glen Oak, someplace like by Temecula, out in the middle of nowhere. And we were, Oakland, yeah. And we were hiding out. We didn't have a phone. We had 4 kids in a little travel trailer. Well, 2, and then on the weekends, his kids. And I had a shop that I finally just had to give away because I couldn't get to work on time. Couldn't because he was always making me late. It was his fault. And so I sold my shop. I just kind of walked away from it and gave it to my partner. And we ended up staying there, and then his brother helped us, and we moved to San Diego. We were in Lakeside. My life begins when I get sober. We were in this little apartment in Lakeside, and O.J. Simpson was on the freeway, and the newscaster was following them, and they said that they had one of Nicole Simpson's friends up there, and she said that Nicole Simpson, there was a lot of drugs and alcohol in that marriage, and Nicole knew how to push his buttons. And Dennis stood up, and he's like there, and he put his finger right here, and he goes, I know exactly what they're talking about. And I have never kept my mouth shut so much as I did that day. About 4 weeks before that, we had been in this fight, and his 13-year-old, she was 13 by now, and she'd come down to stay with us, and she'd brought a friend, and we were yelling and screaming and pushing each other, and she never one time said, Katie, I hate you. You know, she never said that to me. She just said, please don't hurt each other. Please don't hurt each other. She never said, I'm embarrassing you. She never said any of that. And I looked in the mirror the next morning, and I thought, what are you? What are you? My kids had already kind of left. They were staying with their grandparents. My daughter was going to college in Oregon. But I was going to get sober tomorrow. I really didn't even know I thought about getting sober. I just was taking a breath. And so after he said that, I knew that one of us was going to hurt each other really, really bad. And I packed up, and I went to live with my boss, who was sick with AIDS, in Escondido. And for a while, I told my story, and I said I was homeless because I was living on somebody's couch, and I realized I never lived on a couch. That was just, I wanted to make up a story when I came to AA, so I'd be really cool. I loved listening to Marie, yes, last week, because I wanted to be like her. I wanted to be fun and have this great story, but I just didn't. I was just a pathetic woman who drove drunk with her kids, just drove drunk with her kids. And, so I packed up and I went to live with Rudy, and I knew I could get sober. I knew I could get sober because it was all his fault. I never drank until I met him. And I had this illusion that I was the glue that was holding my whole family together. Now, my kids had moved out. Even my stepkids didn't like me, and they used to like me because I gave them everything. And my husband didn't want me, and my parents lived at the Salton Sea, and they didn't want me. But I thought I was the glue that was holding my whole family together. And so I went to Escondido, and I'm working for my boss, and I have to work because I have to have enough tips to buy enough alcohol. So I have to go to work. And he's sick, and Dennis is drinking in Lakeside, and one day, I wasn't going to drink again. I wasn't going to drink. And I went to work, and on the way home, Dennis had called, and he said he was drunk, and he was driving down this windy road behind Lakeside, and I knew he was going to die. And Rudy had been wanting to kill himself because he was dying of AIDS and he wanted to give his family a break, and he was drunk upstairs, butt naked with a gun on the bed. And I came downstairs and I'm looking at a gallon of vodka. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was going to drink that bottle of vodka and I would die. And I picked up the phone, and at that time you could call 411. And so I called 411 on Rudy's phone, and I said, I need the number for Alcoholics Anonymous. And they gave me this number, an 800 number, and I called it, and it's busy. And I'm thinking, of course, God, I do everything for everybody, and they can't even give me a number. I need a number. So I called 411 back with all the dignity that I have left, and I said, look, I need the number for Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't need your 800 number. And she said, honey, are you in trouble? And I went, and I just started bawling, and I said, I'm looking at a bottle of vodka, and I'm going to drink it. She goes, turn around. And it's like, I'd never thought of that. So I turned around, and she goes, where are you at? And I said, I don't know where I'm at. She goes, find an envelope with the address on it. And she went out to her car and got a Thomas Brothers map. And she said, write this down. And so I went out on Lincoln, and I turned right on Lincoln, and then went down to Ash, and I turned right on Ash, and then I came back on Date, and she said, Chestnut's going to turn into a church, and that's where your meeting is. And I'm thinking, okay, so get in the car, and I go down there, and about Chestnut, I think, you've probably overreacted, and you could probably just go home and have a drink and chill out, And I turned around in this parking lot of this church. So I stopped the car, I get out, and I see all these old men. I'm 44 at that time. All these old men, and I'm not happy with men right now. So I'm coming back to the car, and this guy pulls up, and he goes, is this one of those A&A meetings? And I went, yeah, I think it's an old man thing. And he grabbed my arm, and he goes, I don't like walking in there. I don't like walking in there by myself. And so he drags me in there. I have no idea what they said. I know they called some wives. And I know they said, do not go to the Escondido Alano Club because there's no sobriety there, and they cuss a lot. So the next morning at 7, I was at the Escondido Alano Club. And I walked in, and this woman with pink bows, pink polish, a pink pair of shorts, pink flowers on her blouse, says, honey, you don't ever have to drink again if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. And I went, do you promise me that? And she says, yeah, if you do what we do, you don't ever have to drink again. I never knew. I thought the only way you could start a car in 29 Palms was a cigarette in one hand and a beer in the other. I didn't know cars ran without that. I didn't know I could say no. I had no idea. And so I just started coming back every morning at 7, and all of these girls would be around this lady with the pink bow. She knew I wanted her to be my sponsor because that's what they called her. And I want what they had. And I kept going up there, and finally I said, why won't you sponsor me? She goes, well, you haven't asked me. And I went, what do you mean? She goes, what? I can't hear you. And I said, will you be my sponsor? And she said, why? And I said, because I don't know what I'm doing. And so she started having me call her every day. And I called her every day because I knew she worked. And I would call her when she was gone, and I would say, I'm checking in, because I'd get this answering machine. And then one day she answered the phone. And then she said I had to call 2 other women. And so I would call them, and they would answer the phone. And I said, I don't know what the hell I'm calling you for, because I don't know what to say. And they'd say, how are you? And then I'd spend 2 hours telling them. And then I found out they started putting a timer on the thing, and I'd hear this ding, and they'd say, okay, now give me a solution. And I would call and tell him what an asshole my husband was. He was such a jerk. He got sober 4 days more than me. 4 days after I did. The only thing that kept me sober for the first 2 years is I had 4 days more than him, and there's no way I was going to give that up. There is no way. So I know that my God doesn't waste a drop. And so I would call, and I'd tell him what a jerk he was, and Rosemary would say, you know, honey, if you want a prince to ride by on a white horse, you might want to be a princess, because he's going to ride right on by your ass. And she'd hang up on me. And I'd go, okay, I'm going to clean myself up. I'm going to get really spiritual, and I'm going to leave him, and he can see what he can't have. And then my sobriety sisters, they came to my house, and they threw out all of my size 2 clothes. And I went, what? They said, every time you look at those little tiny dresses, what do you think of? Drugs. And they said, you are never going to be a size 2 again. And if you're willing to go to any lengths, we'll help you be fat and happy in AA. And so, you know, I just had to do, I didn't know how to do the housework. I didn't know how to clean. So my sobriety sisters come over, and they took the 7 sets of dishes I had from my grandmother and my mother and my other grandmother and Dennis's grandmother, and they put them away. And they gave us 3. I each got a dinner plate. We each got a cup and a bowl, and everybody had to wash their own dishes. And you know what? It worked. It worked, because I would wait till all 7 of those sets of dishes were dirty. I didn't know. I didn't know how. I knew how to hide it in the oven when you came to the door. I didn't know how to breathe. And they would just tell me, just take a breath. Breathe God in, Katie out. And they said, and get a Glad bag, because you got a bunch of junk. And so I could breathe God in and breathe my crap out. And it took me almost a year to do my 4th step, and then I go, and I'm going to sit on the bed, I'm going to tell Rosemary everything. And I couldn't read my writing because I couldn't spell. And I just started bawling. And she said, stick figures, it'll work. And we just kind of started doing the steps. And then when I was like, I couldn't come into a meeting. I'd have to leave my glasses in the car and then tell you I couldn't read how it works, because you know that I was stupid, and you can't know I'm stupid. And sober is bad. It's really, really bad. I'm so glad I was not struck sober, because I could do anything knowing that there was a reward, a drink, a drug, anything at the end of the day. I could go and stand behind my chair and go, hi, how are you? I'm fine, yes. And then I knew it was waiting. But when it was gone, I didn't know how to do anything. I had panic attacks. I had seizures. And I didn't know how to breathe. And so I would be in the car, and I'd try to get from Escondido to Oceanside, and I had to get off on Melrose, and I couldn't. And then I'd end up in Oceanside, and I'd have to get out, go to the payphone, call my sponsor. She'd say, breathe, stupid, just breathe. Where's God in all of this? Where's God? I don't know. He's in the glove box. I don't know. And I would just have to get back on the freeway and ask God to help me breathe. And then I could get off on Melrose, and I could go to work. And then I could go to the noon meeting. And then I could go to work. And then I could go to the 6 o'clock meeting. And then I could go to work. And they just kind of put out fires, because all of a sudden these teenagers started living with us, Dennis's kids. And when I did my 4th step, if you did a 4th step and some really stupid things are on it, then you're doing it right. I had the biggest resentment at my stepchildren, because they didn't get hurt as bad as my kids. I hated them. Every time they would be having fun with their dad sober, I'd come in and I would ruin it. I would suck the joy right out of the room, because I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand me. I couldn't stand you. And we had to give permission to each other to hate each other. I mean, we had beat each other up and beat our kids up. We had to kind of like I thought I was the nice one. I really did. And one day, I was on the floor screaming at God because they said I had to have one. So I just said, okay. And I didn't realize that I was scared to death if I gave my will and my life over to this God, that he was going to make me Mormon. I was going to go to Africa and I was going to knock on hut doors. I would never be able to wash my hair with hot water again. And I was scared to death. And finally, I just started screaming, fine, send me to Africa. I don't care. Just make it stop. And I fell asleep on the living room floor. And I woke up the next morning and I hadn't died. And I thought, okay, that works. And then I was able to do that fourth step. And I was able to sit. I had lied about, I had some cancer. They did some freeze-dried stuff on it. And then I never went back. So when I started losing all the weight, my customers said, oh, it must be the medicine from the cancer. Yep, that's it. So I had lied about all of that cancer stuff. So the first sponsor I pick has lymphoma. And there's no way I'm going to sit there and tell her that I lied about having cancer when she's fighting for her life. And so I said, okay, I lied about having cancer. The first thing, she said, what are you not going to tell me? And that was not on my written stuff. And I told her. And she starts cracking up. And she said, I bet you think you're going to die of cancer now. And I said, no, but my children will. And we just got over it. And in the middle of the night, I bought this blouse because I was getting fat, and it made me look thinner, and we had no money. And so my husband goes, where'd you get that blouse? And I said, oh, one of my customers gave it to me. Like 3 a.m, I'm calling my sponsor. Okay, I told you and I told God, I'm good, right? I told God and another human being, we're good. She goes, call me after you tell Dennis. And so I had to sit there and say, okay, that blouse? I lied because I didn't want to take your crap. I didn't want to take any crap. And he goes, you lied about the blouse? Yeah. And he never says anything else. Like a week later, I put the blouse on. He goes, so you got the lion blouse on. I don't know how that stuff works. But I didn't die, and I got caught lying. I had to go to work one day, and the shopping center had gotten robbed, and there was all these guys at my AA meeting, and so I told them, I said, I have to go back to work. And they had armed robberies and all of this, and so they went with me, and I went back to work, and I got whatever it was I forgot. And then the next day I had to tell them, okay, I kind of exaggerated the armed robbery thing, So then they talked about it from the podium for a week, and I didn't die. I didn't die. I came in and I spilled coffee all over an old-timer, and I didn't die. They laughed at me. I was able to go back to school and take adult literacy, and I found out I wasn't stupid. I was too vain to wear my glasses. And so I never got the phonics. I learned how to respect my children. When the amends came, I started making amends to my daughter when I was like a minute and a half sober. And she would call me and I'd say, honey, I'm so sorry I did this and this and this. And she'd say, it's okay, Mommy, I love you. It's okay, Mommy, I love you. And my sobriety sisters wouldn't let me say that anymore. They said I was just, want instant gratification. And so I had to learn to write down what she said. She was in Oregon. She was going to college. I had to write down the classes that she was taking that she was having trouble with, the boyfriend that she was dating, so I could remember to ask her about her. And I couldn't tell her I was sorry. I had to ask her. And I'm so self-absorbed that I couldn't remember what she was saying. So I had to write it down and have it by the phone. And then I had to have this sign on the phone that said, did she ask you for advice? Did she ask you? Is there a question mark at the end of the sentence? And then I had to have this sign up on my mirror that says, are you treating Dennis the way you want to be treated no matter what? And he would walk by the mirror and say, have you read that lately? I don't understand how we did this together. We destroyed each other in 8 years. We were 8 years sober when we moved from Escondido to Yucca Valley. And my first sponsor had just passed away with lymphoma. And I got to sit with her and hold her hand. I got to be there, present. And she had started me working on my mom. And I said this prayer, okay, I want to be a good daughter no matter what. I want to be a good daughter no matter what. And if you go to a meeting and you need to hear something and you say a prayer, you're going to hear what you got to hear. And so this lady flops down next to me, and she's like the head of this recovery house. And she plops down next to me, and she goes, you just got to let ducks be ducks. And I went, what? She goes, yeah, I got to let ducks be ducks. And I went, my mom's a duck. I always wanted a golden retriever. I wanted my mom to look at me with big brown eyes and tell me that she loves me and she's loyal, and she's a duck. She can't even do it. And so I started letting her be a duck. And they suggested that I learn to see her as a woman, not as my mom. And I found all these articles. And my mom was one of the first women that got on board a ship and sailed to Japan. They were married in 45. She was in Japan in 46. I told my husband, I said, I love you, honey, but I'll meet you on furlough in Hawaii, because there's no way I'm going to go to a country that we dropped a bomb. And, my mom was amazing. I still didn't like her very much, but she was an amazing woman. And so we finally decided I was going to take a vacation with her. And I opened my suitcase when I got to our destination, and there must have been 4,000 little ducks in my suitcase. My sobriety sisters had snuck in and put all these little squeaky rubber ducks in my suitcase. And I had an amazing vacation with my mom. And I was there with my mom when she died. And I have a son that's mentally ill and is in his disease. And I don't know if he used because he was in his disease, or if he used and he got a disease. I don't know. But he's super schizophrenic, and he doesn't like me most days. But I'm able to be there, and I don't have to know. I wanted him just to be an alcoholic a long time. I just wanted him to be an alcoholic, so I could fix him. And today, I can say a prayer when the phone rings and ask God if I'm spiritually fit enough to be a good mother to an adult child with alcoholism. If I can be kind, if I can hear him. 10 years ago, I started this. I got a puppy, and it was a golden retriever, and his name was Wall-E, like the Walt Disney movie. And Wall-E and I went to amazing places. I couldn't read when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. And Wally and I got to go to disasters, and any kind of disaster, large or strong, Vegas shootings, Paradise fires. We got to go, and we got to give comfort to the victims. We got to help counselors that needed to talk to people. And one of my favorite things to do was we would go to high schools in California, they have to have this thing called E15s, and they have to have them before prom and graduation. And what they do is that somebody dies every 15 minutes from a drunk driver. And they do a reenactment. And they take kids from all the groups at the high school, the band, the student body, all of the different groups. And they do a 3-day reenactment. And Wally and I got to go to these high schools. And we got to look these kids in the eye where their parents were in prison for drunk driving. Their sibling had just been killed from a drunk driver. We got to hear these letters that these kids wrote. And one of the girls that lost a sibling to a drunk driver, her letter said, "Mom, you told me never to get in the car with a drunk driver, and I never did. You told me never to drink and drive, and I never did. Then why am I laying here?" And I get to look these kids in the eye, and I get to make my amends when I do things like that, because I drove drunk. And for whatever reason, I'm standing here sharing a message of Alcoholics Anonymous with you all. And I can walk into any room because I've done the steps, because I've gone to any length. There's not one person that I can't look in the eye. That boy that got molested, they told me I couldn't stay sober if I didn't forgive. And I didn't let go. And I told this higher power, I said, this is your job. Your job is forgiveness. My job is going to stay sober. I don't know how to forgive you. I don't know how to forgive him. I don't know how to forgive him. And I had to just let God forgive, because I didn't know how. To this day, did I forgive this man? I don't know. But I gave God, and I wrote it down, all my anger, all my guilt for picking him because I was too scared to raise my kids by myself. I gave God all the things I think should happen to him. And I wrapped them in a blanket, and I put them in my God box. I have a God box. And I let God take care of that. And this amazing thing happened, because it was one of the last things I could do in my 8th step, is to get willing to forgive him. And I felt forgiven for the first time in my life. I felt clean. And I don't know I don't know. But when I forgave, I felt forgiven. I don't know all these paradoxes. I do the steps with a lot of women. And we're constantly in the big book. I don't know how to do it any other way. I have sobriety sisters. My sponsor is Michaeline. She lives in Escondido. When I moved to Yucca Valley and my first sponsor passed away, I had a full first sponsor for about a year. And that was me, because I tried to sponsor myself. And if you don't know what untreated alcoholism is, that would have been me. I was insane. I was crazy. And finally, I went to see Michaeline speak in the Laughlin Roundup. And I was going to ask her to sponsor me because she hurts people's feelings all the time, and she loves me enough to hurt my feelings. And all my sponsors, all my sobriety sisters love me enough to hurt my feelings. And so I finally said, "Michaeline, will you be my sponsor?" She says, "God, yes, I can't stand the way it was, one more time." And so she calls me on my shit. She calls me when I used to say my sponsor is not my friend. We have become friends. But when I call my sponsor, I have a pen and a paper. And I get caught at the worst times because I think I'm doing something really cool, and like I'll say, I'm getting to know my sister. I had a sister who was smarter than me. She took the high road. She never drank. And I had my sister. And then there was all these years. And then we retired together. And we're traveling together. And we're together. And I told her, I said, my sister is just, she doesn't tell me things. She doesn't tell me the truth. She can't tell me the truth. And I said, and I'm just letting that be okay. I'm just letting her be her. And Michael goes, maybe she's afraid to tell you the truth because your opinion's always right there. And I had to look at that. And I made my sister afraid to tell me things because I have an AA answer for everything, and I have the answer, and I'm a solution-oriented person. But I don't hear a word you're saying, but I'll tell you the solution, and that's 20-some years sober. So, I am a work in progress. I am so grateful that I am learning. We're going through the steps again, and with 3 people, and I am learning one more time how to get back to the basics. Everything I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, I pretty much learned the first 30 days. They told me things that drive me crazy now when I hear people, it's the paradox. Things that saved my ass before, now I get all big book on them, and they'll say, it takes the same muscle to pick up the phone as it does a drink. And that saved my life. That saved my life. Can you go 24 hours without a drink? Well, if I could have done that, I wouldn't have been here. But I could go from meeting to meeting to meeting, and so I don't have to judge. What saved my life not always was in the big book. It wasn't always in the big book. It was my higher power connecting me with you. And then you always connect me back to my higher power because I am self-willed and riot, and I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I have a plan. And my character defects, they kind of go out, get this Earlshire paint job, and they come back and they look like assets. I'm manipulative and I want to do all of this, and then I think I have good people skills. Until they said, and how's that working for you? How's those people skills working? And today I know that when I'm driving, we have a place in Idlewild, and when I'm driving up that windy road and a car starts to pass me and then they pull back in because they see me, and the rest of the way home, I'm getting ready to tell Dennis, I almost got killed on the road to Idlewild. I almost got killed. Yeah, that was so close. They almost took my mirror off. And I can walk in today and I say, I think I need a hug. And I think you need to tell me you love me. And then I am super special because I was making up this big old story in my head to get some attention because I need some attention. And I would have gone to any lengths to get attention, but don't look at me. Don't look at me because I don't want anybody to see me. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a life beyond my wildest dreams. I did not know that God had anything to do with that 411 operator until I was like a year sober, 2 years sober, and I was standing at the podium and I was talking about how cool that was. And somebody said, did you see God's hand in that? It's like, huh? I don't know to look for God's hand. You guys tell me to find God in the mix. And you don't tell me who your God is. You tell me how to find your God. You tell me how to get there, how to get back, how to take a breath. Today I can breathe. And I lost Wally last year. And I had to go through a whole process because my whole life I had this chair between me and you because I was a hairdresser. And you're not going to disagree with me when I have a pair of scissors really close to your throat. And I always had that chair between us. And then, before I retired, I had Wally. And Wally walked in and he did the work. I just had to be at the end of the leash. And when Wally died, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I would be. And Alcoholics Anonymous has let me become who Wally took me to be. And I get to continue to do the work that I've done. I'm just not a team with a dog anymore. I get to be a team leader, and I get to watch the teams and make sure they take care of their dogs and that they're not overtired. And my husband got me a little black lab last December. And I'm going to end with this. I was praying, oh, God, please let her be good with kids. Oh, God, please let her be good with people. Please let her be good with fire trucks. Please let her go on a helicopter. Let her ride a boat. And all of a sudden, God went, you haven't asked me one time to be a good pet owner. Why don't we start there? And because of Alcoholics Anonymous, Eva doesn't have to become Wally. Eva, extravehicular activity, and that was Wally's girlfriend, Eva. So Eva gets to be what she wants to be. And we're going to see what she wants to be. Just like I'm going to let God, I'm not going to exclude myself anymore. I'm going to let God include me. And He's made a woman of substance out of me. And when I look in the mirror, it's like I am so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm so grateful. Thank you for asking me to speak. And I hope your higher power let you hear something. Thank you.
Wow. Let's thank Katie again.
Yeah.
And next week we get to hear Dennis's side.
Anything that he
I forgot to ask, is there any medallions to be given tonight? By chance. Okay, cool. All right. How are we looking? Well, Kathy, our guest, would you like to come up and say a couple things? We got a few minutes left. Oh, my name is Kathy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kathy.
This is a surprise. Thank you for speaking tonight. The minute you said where you were from, I texted Katie King and asked her if she knew you, and she said you were great friends. Well, Havasu's busy, and it's a great place to be. As soon as I got to town, I came here and went to a 5:30 meeting. I always find my peeps, no matter where I go. That's the first thing I do is find my people, And so and then Smokey, of course, he told me make sure you go to the Sun meetings. So I've enjoyed being here, and I'm probably going to be here for a couple more days. Spring break crowd's a little overwhelming. Went down to the Channel yesterday, and it was this beautiful, wide open place, and my dog was chasing around this little speedboat thing. Today I went back, and oh my God, I couldn't wait to get out of there after I threw the ball for her. I have a dog that I loved hearing the story about the importance of a dog in your life, and we're just running around the country the West anyway, in our van, and I guess along with chasing the sun, I'm chasing Alcoholics Anonymous and letting the Creator guide me the whole way. So really grateful to be anywhere, and drunk or sober, I'm always an alcoholic. Thanks.